Lenovo's Legion 5 and Acer's Helios Neo 16 are both great 16-inch gaming laptops this year. So which should you get? I've compared both to find out which is the best. It's personal preference, but the Legion looks a bit cleaner in my opinion, as the Helios has random stuff printed on the lid and the RGB logo. Overall build quality feels good with both. They both have a plastic interior and metal lid. The Legion's lid felt a bit nicer to open due to slightly tighter hinges, but neither wobble when typing. The lid on the Helios goes back further than many others at about 140 degrees, so plenty for comfortable viewing, but the Legion goes right back the full 180 degrees. The Legion is a little smaller when you've got them both side by side. It's slightly thinner, but the main thing is its back doesn't stick out as much. The Legion was slightly wider, but it's less of a difference. Both of my laptops have Intel's Core i7-14700HX processor, Nvidia's RTX 4070 graphics, 32 gigs of RAM at the same speed, and 16-inch screens. They're both the same resolution, but my Helios has a higher refresh rate, but you can also buy the Legion with a 240Hz panel too, which gives them the same key specs. The Helios is about 7% heavier when compared to the Legion without the chargers included. The Legion is more of a middle-of-the-road weight as far as 16-inch gaming laptops go, while the Helios is on the heavier end of the spectrum. But once we include the chargers, the Helios is now 14% heavier than the Legion, due to its larger and heavier 330-watt charger. Normally, you only really see these bigger power bricks paired with more power-hungry gaming laptops that have RTX 4080 or 4090 graphics. But there might be a reason why Acer has chosen to do this. So during 3 hours of thermal testing, where I fully load up both the CPU and GPU in a heavy stress test, the Legion's battery actually lowered from 100% charge to 80%. Now, that's not ideal, but most games aren't going to fully max out both the CPU and GPU consistently the entire time. My stress tests aren't exactly a realistic workload, they're a worst case. So it should be less of a problem in practice. But at the same time, there wasn't any battery drain in the same test on the Helios, presumably in part due to its higher wattage charger. So that's the trade-off, a bit less portability, but more long-term sustained performance. Both keyboards have 4 zones of RGB backlighting, and all keys and secondary functions get lit up. But the colors from the Helios definitely look nicer. They're just more vibrant. The Helios has more lighting effects built in, but the Legion software felt easier to use as it's more basic. The Helios also lets you control the lighting of the lid logo, while the Legion doesn't have any other RGB lighting. The keyboard on the Helios feels more cramped. Its position of the arrow keys results in a smaller right shift key and smaller 0 key on the numpad, both of which aren't a limit on the Legion, as its arrow keys are shifted down. In terms of actually typing though, it's tough. I liked typing on both of them, but I'd say the Helios has a clickier feel. The touchpad on the Helios is a little bigger, but I never thought that the Legion's was too small. Both worked well. I can't say I preferred one over the other. The Helios wins in terms of port differences. Both laptops have 3 USB Type-A ports, but 2 on the Helios are faster 3.2 Gen 2, while all 3 on the Legion are slower Gen 1. They both have 2 Type-C ports, but only the Helios has Thunderbolt 4 support. Ethernet is faster at 2.5 gigabit on the Helios versus the 1 gigabit on the Legion. Otherwise, both have a microSD card slot, HDMI 2.1 output, and 3.5mm audio combo jack. I prefer that the Legion has port icons on the back, so you know where to plug your cables in without needing to look over or turn the laptop around. But Lenovo's port placement is a bit weird, with ports closer to the front and more likely to get in the way, despite there being more room due to no side air exhaust vents. Both laptops support charging over USB Type-C, but the Helios only goes up to 65 watts, while the Legion supports up to 140, though technically that might need a special Lenovo charger to actually get to 140 watts, but it can still do 100 watts with regular chargers no problem. So you're able to get more power on the go with the Legion with a smaller charger. And both Type-C ports on both laptops have DisplayPort support for connecting screens. And on both laptops, both of those ports connect directly to the Nvidia graphics, whether Optimus is on or off. And that goes for HDMI too, so none of the display outputs on either of these laptops connect directly to the Intel integrated graphics, which is ideal if you're after maximum performance or doing VR. Both laptops have their batteries down the front, 2 memory slots, 2 M.2 storage slots, and a Wi-Fi 6E card. Despite having the same level of upgradability once inside, the Legion gets a slightly better upgrade score, but that's only because it's easier to open, as the Helios changed to the less common Torx screw this year. Last year's 2023 model used Phillips head screws, and it's just more likely that you've got a Phillips head screwdriver. Both laptops came with a 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD installed, but the speeds weren't really that different. The microSD card slots were both slow, as my card is capable of more than 200 megabytes a second. The card is a bit more secure with the Helios, as it clicks in and sits the whole way in, whereas the Legion does not click in and sticks out slightly. Both laptops have Wi-Fi 6E, but the killer Wi-Fi in the Helios wasn't quite as good as the Legion. Both are well over gigabit speeds though, so this difference won't matter in the real world for most people. The speakers are found underneath on the left and right sides towards the front. The Helios gets louder, but the Legion sounds a bit better. It's easier to hear the Legion's bass, and it's just a bit clearer. The Latencymon results were better on the Helios, though that wasn't particularly amazing either. The Helios has a bigger 90Wh battery compared to the Legion's 80Wh battery, but despite that, the Legion ended up lasting 72% longer in our YouTube video playback test. A massive difference. This is in part due to Acer's lack of battery saving features. The Legion automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate down to 60Hz when you unplug the charger to help save power, while the Helios has no such feature. You could of course do that manually, but honestly, I doubt most people are going to remember to do it. And besides, that change alone isn't enough to account for this difference. Both laptops allow you to limit the maximum charge level to around 80% to improve battery longevity. Let's check out thermals next. Both laptops have 2 fans with heat pipes shared between the CPU and GPU. The Helios exhausts air out of both the left and right sides, as well as out the back, while the Legion only exhausts air out of the back, so no hot air blowing on your mouse hand. They both have plenty of holes underneath for air intake. Both laptops have 4 different performance modes that can be set through software, as well as custom fan control, but the Legion provides far more customization. The Legion lets you customize CPU and GPU, power, and temperature limits. The Helios does not. Both laptops have a way of swapping between performance modes with a keyboard shortcut, Function plus Q for the Legion, while the Helios has a dedicated button for the task. Both of them show a different colored light, so you can easily tell which mode you're in. The temperatures weren't that different, with both sitting there doing nothing at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. The Helios was a bit warmer in quiet, balanced, and performance modes, but then the Legion was a little warmer on the CPU in its highest mode. The Legion's GPU was cooler though. We can see why when looking at the power levels being reached. Acer's Helios is limited to 60 watts on the processor with the GPU under load at the same time, while the Legion can pump this up to 75 watts in custom mode, or 85 watts with custom mode and the optional extreme checkbox ticked. This explains why the Legion was subject to the previously mentioned battery drain. Not only does it have a lower wattage charger, but it can use more power under load too. And if it can't get enough from the wall, it supplements it from the battery. It's worth talking about the Helios having a higher GPU power limit. As far as I'm concerned, this is the Silicon Lottery, aka luck. Both are listed as full-powered 140-watt GPUs in NVIDIA's control panel, but they're limited by NVIDIA's voltage limit to 0.985 volts. Basically, I think it's just luck that the Helios is going a bit above 100 watts. I'm sure it would be a bit different between different laptops, but this may help give it a subtle edge in gaming, which we'll test later. More power equals more performance, which is why the CPU in the Legion was able to perform better in the highest modes. The RTX 4070 was actually reaching the same clock speed, because voltage was the limit, so again, the wattage difference we just saw probably doesn't matter too much. It might even explain why the 4070 in the Helios was more than 10 degrees warmer. The CPU can use much more power if the GPU is idle, like in Cinebench. Both laptops performed very similarly here. The Helios was scoring 1% higher in multi-core performance, which is within the margin of error range. Single core score really depends on silicon lottery, so basically I'd say they're about the same here. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and instead run off of battery power, but the Helios drops down a fair bit more. The Legion was still able to perform 40% better in multi-core performance in this test. Granted, that would probably drain its battery faster, but it means the Legion may function a bit better on battery power. Most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle. Both were a little under this and felt cool. There's not much difference with the stress test running in the lowest quiet modes. It's not that different in the higher balanced or performance modes either. You want to compare the temperature readouts here, rather than the colors. Just use the colors to determine where the hotspots are. Even in the highest performance modes, both laptops are still cool to the touch. There's no problems at all here, but let's have a listen to the difference in fan noise. The fans in the Helios are able to get louder if you manually set them to full speed, but the Helios was quieter in turbo mode with the fans on auto compared to the Legion on custom mode with the extreme checkbox ticked, which is basically what I'd consider to be the best performance modes of both laptops. But otherwise at lower performance levels, there weren't too many differences. Both laptops have 16-inch 2560 by 1600 resolution screens. The Helios has a 240Hz refresh rate, while my Legion 5 has a 165Hz refresh rate, but you can also buy the Legion 5 with a higher quality 240Hz panel, which gets brighter and is a bit more comparable to the Helios. I just don't happen to have that right here in this one. The Helios has better colors, but again, that might be different with the 240Hz panel on the Legion. The Helios gets brighter too, but that 240Hz option on the Legion is rated at 500 nits and would probably be close. Backlight bleed wasn't noticeable with either laptop, but this will vary between all laptops. The Helios was a little faster when it came to screen response time, but not only is this small difference within the margin of error and not enough that most people would even notice, but the 240Hz option on the Legion would probably close the gap anyway. The total system latency is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in Counter-Strike 2. The Helios was faster here too. Some of this would be due to the faster screen, but that wouldn't account for the near 3 millisecond gap. The Helios is just faster to respond to clicks. Both laptops have a MUX switch, advanced Optimus so you don't have to reboot when swapping between Optimus on or off, and both have G-Sync available when Optimus is off for tear-free gameplay. Both laptops have 1080p cameras, but neither has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. The Legion has a camera disconnect switch on the right for privacy, while the Helios does not. Here's how the Legion's camera looks and sounds, and then this is the Helios, which I don't think is as good. Alright, now for what you've probably all been waiting for. How do they actually compare in games? We've tested both of them with these settings for best results. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested with our own custom test run, and I've got both laptops highlighted in red. At 1080p, they're basically the same. Technically, the Helios was a couple of FPS ahead, but honestly, this small difference is within the margin of error range, and isn't something you'd actually notice when playing anyway. The Helios has a further lead at the higher 1440p resolution, but the Legion was still better compared to most of the other 4070 gaming laptops that we've tested so far. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the game's benchmark. The Helios had a slight lead at 1080p here too, but again, it's only a small difference and kind of insignificant in the real world. They're even closer together at 1440p, and again, both laptops are ahead when compared to most other 4070 laptops that we've tested. They're essentially the same in control at 1080p and 1440p too. The only way you're able to get a noticeable performance boost from this point is by spending more on an RTX 4080 laptop. The results were mostly close in 3D Mark, except for Firestrike, where the Helios had a more noticeable lead. The Helios generally performed better when it came to content creation, which surprised me, considering the Legion could sustain a higher CPU power limit with the GPU active. And I can't explain why it's hanging out with RTX 4090 laptops in Photoshop. If I had to guess, it's because that benchmark doesn't care as much much about the GPU, and single-core CPU performance was similar to i9 processors. But again, as discussed in the Cinebench section, that's just silicon lottery luck. Lenovo's BIOS has more customization compared to Acer's, despite Acer's visually looking a bit more impressive. Granted, that's my personal opinion. There's just not much you can actually change on the Helios in comparison. The Legion's Linux support is a little better. Both laptops had a working keyboard, touchpad, camera, speakers, Ethernet, and Wi-Fi. Keyboard shortcuts on both for changing volume, adjusting screen brightness, and keyboard brightness worked, but the Helios's keyboard was stuck to blue lighting, whereas you can cycle through the different profiles on the Legion. The Legion's performance mode change shortcut also still works, while the Helios's extra button above the keyboard on the left does not. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and current sales. And if either of these laptops does have a good sale, we'll be sure to add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the latest sales, so make sure that you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. At the time of recording, I can only find the Legion 5 with almost the same specs for $1,500 US, but this one has a higher tier i9 14900HX processor. Meanwhile, Acer's Helios Neo 16 with the exact specs I've tested here goes for $200 more, or you can get it with an i9 processor but half the RAM for the same price. So the Helios costs more money right now. The Legion might even be cheaper than this if I could actually find it with this i7 processor in stock, further widening the price difference between these two laptops. Of course, the Helios could have a really good sale while the Legion isn't on sale. So for argument's sake, let's just assume that you can pick up both of these laptops for about the same price. So for the same amount of money then, which laptop should you pick? Let's start out by summarizing how they're similar. They've both got similar CPU performance with the charger connected. Gaming performance is quite close to for the most part, maybe with a subtle edge to the Helios. They both feel cool to the touch when under load. Heat wasn't an issue with either of them. SSD and microSD card speeds were about the same. They've got the same amount of upgrade options, and both their keyboards are nice to type on, though the Legion's offset arrow keys give it a bigger right shift and the 0 in the numpad is in the right spot. But ultimately, I like typing on them both the same. The Helios was a little clickier, but that's going to be personal preference. As for wins, let's start where the Helios did better. My Helios has a better screen, which gets brighter, has better color gamut, and better response time. But as mentioned, the Legion would probably be much the same if you were getting it with the 240Hz screen option, though that would probably increase its price a little bit. The Helios was better in content creation performance, its keyboard colors just look more vibrant, and the software has more customization in terms of RGB lighting and more effects built in. The Helios has faster ports and better port locations. It has lower latency, which is great for competitive gamers, and its touchpad is just a little bit bigger, though I liked using both of them pretty much the same. I couldn't pick a winner between them. But hey, for some people, bigger is better. Alright, now for where the Legion does better. The Legion has a cleaner overall look and design, at least in my opinion, but that's personal preference. What is objective is the Legion has better BIOS customization, better Linux support, better speakers, slightly better Wi-Fi. Granted, that was a pretty negligible difference. I think the Legion software is easier to navigate, and it also has more customization around performance modes, as you can set power and temperature limits, something you can't do on the Helios. The Legion is smaller and lighter, and also has a smaller power brick, though as mentioned, this may contribute to battery drain if you're absolutely smashing the CPU and GPU at the same time for many hours. The Legion also supports higher wattage charging over USB Type-C. It has better battery saving options in software. It can sustain higher CPU performance when running on battery power. The Legion's battery life is much better, and I think the camera and mic quality was a bit better too. So all things considered, the Legion is winning in more categories than it's losing, which I think makes it the winner, especially if you get it with that 240Hz screen, because then it would negate some of the benefits offered by the Helios. At the end of the day though, both of these are great gaming laptops, and apart from the Helios's terrible battery life, most people probably wouldn't actually notice a practical difference day to day between both of these laptops. So with the same key specs inside, you could just get whichever's cheaper and have a great time. But given the Legion is cheaper right now, well, that's just icing on the cake, making it the overall better pick at the moment. But let me know which you would pick and why down in the comments. And if you want more information on either of these laptops, then check out my full review videos. I go into a little more depth in those, which might help you make the final choice before pulling the trigger. I'll see you in one of those next.